All right. Well, we are pleased that everybody's joined that's here. We do understand that time's valuable, and we appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us today in this webinar. And at this time, I'll go ahead and turn it over to David Mueller, our VP of Strategic Programs.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, or maybe evening for some of you. I want to welcome you to this webinar. This happens to be our 11th Paragon webinar. And since the start of the pandemic, we've tried to provide the industry some relevant topics, which we believe bring value. Used to be, we all got together for conferences, but those, I've been to one in the last, I think, 2 years. And that face-to-face and discussion over the coffee table are missed. So we heard it from our customers, and we decided a while back to start up these webinars for important subjects. So that's what today's session is about. Next slide. So for some housekeeping, everyone will be on mute just to make sure that we keep the background noise down. We do have a Q&A section where you can type in a question or comment at any time during the prezo. We'll get to it. We've also saved plenty of time at the end to assure all questions and comments are addressed. Part of what makes these webinars a success is the many questions and comments we get from you and across the industry. I believe these really encourage or bring out industry best practices. So I really encourage you to type in your question or your comment. There's a lot of expertise on this call, no doubt, and your comment and opinion and thought on maybe what you guys do best will add value to the discussion for everybody else. Like other webinars, we will be recording this. So for those of you who aren't on the call, or if you have to drop off for any reason, you can obviously just pop it up and watch it at a later time. And if you really like what you enjoy, make sure you tell your peer or your coworker, and if there's something valuable, you can use it. So we find that the post-webinar views usually outnumber the webinar itself. So next slide. So our agenda for the session is fairly straightforward. We are going to highlight the long history of dedication. It's not anything new, but it has evolved, and we'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about some of the general basics. Obviously, we'll discuss the challenges in the industry of doing dedication. We also want to make sure that we discuss the different types, whether it be a one-time major component dedication or those more routine generic types, where a single dedication plan can address and support a whole family of like components. We will also discuss Paragon's approach to dedication and why dedication is becoming not only a larger used strategy today, that's based on the supply chain issues we are all experiencing and the number of safety-related suppliers leaving the industry or also having those same lead time issues. We believe this topic is very timely. Next slide. So a little bit about Paragon. Some of you might be familiar with us and some of you might be new to us. We are the largest non-OEM supplier in the US today. We have over 250 employees and that number has grown by 60 in just 2021. And we continue to add talented staff to meet our customer needs. We're really excited about the growth of the company, and we believe that demonstrates the trust that our many suppliers have, or many utilities have in our expertise and experience. Paragon was formed in 2017 when Doug Van Tassel, our CEO, purchased the nuclear division of ATC. Many of you might remember the name ATC Nuclear. That goes back over 20 years. So you might recognize the ATC Nuclear name. But in 2017, like I said, Doug purchased that division of ATC, and that's where Paragon was formed. In February of 2020, Paragon purchased NLI, Nuclear Logistics, and now the combined companies and strengths provide the industry and what we believe is an unequaled organization of talent and experience. The NLI, purchase basically doubled the size of our company, and it connected a lot of experience and dots in what Paragon did well and what NLI did, and we believe it shows in the growth of the company. So we're really excited about that. Paragon is obviously audited and approved by U.S. Nuclear, 10 CFR Appendix B, but also our friends up north in Canada were approved for all your requirements, and also DOE, Department of Defense, just recently completed a new PIC audit and NRC audit. So almost no matter where you are listening to this, we are an approved safety related supplier. We also have that last bullet, the ASME Section 3. Much of our discussion today on dedication is going to evolve around I&C type components or electrical components. But we have full capability on valves and mechanical type items, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Next slide. So what is dedication? Basically, and quite simply, dedication is a process that provides reasonable assurance that a commercial grade item will perform its intended safety function. We find a commercial item that you could purchase anywhere, identify the critical characteristics, and then test it to meet your application. And how do we assure that? We provide an audible collection of documents which identify and address the critical characteristics and provides objective and documented evidence that ensures that the dedicated commercial grade item will perform its safety function. It sounds pretty simple, but the steps required are pretty detailed to identify the critical characteristics, do the applicable testing, shaking, seismic, whatever. That's the devil in the detail. But basically, dedication is a fairly easy explanation. Next slide. So why do we need commercial grade dedication? Why are we talking about it today during our webinar? First and foremost, the stations, I'm sure if you're in the supply side, your stations don't want to hear about supply chain issues and long lead times. They require supply to meet the continued aggressive parts availability goals. Each of you in some way support the station work stability metrics, and parts availability is a key metric to that. And so we believe, again, with the long lead times and more and more safety related suppliers dropping out, that commercial grade dedication helps do that. Dedication usually a quicker way. It reduces lead time because it's a commercial part, and it can be bought off the shelf from anywhere. The other benefit of dedication, obviously, parts availability is one of your most important things when you talk to your customer of the station, but it can also provide the material at a lower cost. And most of you are also looking for cost savings these days, and so we believe third-party supplier testing provides sometimes significant cost savings. So that's dedication, a little bit of our agenda. I'm going to turn the podium over here to Tracy Bolt, and he's going to go through some of the devil in detail that I highlighted. Tracy?
Thank you, Dave. Yes, my name is Tracy Bolt. I am the Chief Nuclear Officer here at Paragon. I've been in the industry for around 30 years now. This is my 25th year for this organization. And I really appreciate everybody joining today and listening to us go over this webinar on dedication. And like Dave said before, commercial grade dedication, it's been around for a long time. It has evolved, but primarily the methods haven't really changed since 1978. But just the expectation of the documentation and how to actually perform the dedication activity and what's expected in a package. So back in 1978 is when it was first introduced in TNCFR Part 21 as a means for the power plants to be able to take a commercial item and use it in the nuclear grade application. You know, you had original manufacturers who built the plants. Either, you know, they no longer provided the parts as safety related, or they were no longer in business, depending on what the item was. So there had to be a means of being able to provide reasonable assurance that the commercial grade item would actually perform its safety function just as an item that was originally manufactured to meet the nuclear grade requirements. So it took around 10 years, but EPRI put together the first dedication document, the guidance MP 5652 for performing commercial grade dedication and providing those methods to ensure reasonable assurance it would perform its safety function. Throughout the years, there were several other documents that were introduced. There were, you know, NRC endorsements of the particular document and other guidance documents that were produced to help aid in the dedication process. In 2014, EPRI put together the 300-200-2982, which is a revision of the MP 5652 document. And what this did is it really pulled together all those industry documents and provided, you know, a central technical report that could really define what's necessary to perform commercial grade dedication. Provided really good examples to follow, and it really gave the industry some consistency on what to expect and what the end user should expect from a dedicating entity, or if they're even doing the dedication themselves at the plant. In 2017, the NRC endorsed that document, and their endorsement really provides the backbone of being able to use that guidance as the go-to document for performing dedication activities. So again, the Reg Guide 1.164 from the NRC, it is the endorsement of the EPRI dedication document. It is, again, it provides assurance to the industry that the NRC has looked at this document and has considered it acceptable for performing dedication activities. One thing to consider is that along with the endorsement, it's an endorsement in part. So they have two exceptions within the Reg Guide that limit the endorsement to primarily just the main document of the 300-200-2982 document. Because within that guidance, there are several other documents that are referenced within it. And the NRC makes it clear that they have only endorsed the main document. They weren't endorsing all of the documents contained within it because they were not asked to actually endorse or accept those other reference documents. It doesn't mean that those other EPRI documents aren't acceptable to use. It just means that the NRC hasn't formally reviewed and accepted them. So now as we talk about the basics of dedication, we're going to talk about, you know, what do we need? You know, what's necessary to perform the dedication activity? You know, what are the things that we need to think about? One of the primary items that we need to know is, what do you want? What item is it that you need, and what is the safety function of that item? Where is it used? What's the application? Because that's the information that really guides us when we do the technical evaluation and develop the commercial grade dedication plan. So we'll have to look at the item, look at the application, what its primary function is. We'll determine what the failure modes are of that item. We'll determine what the critical characteristics need to be to ensure we verify that the item will perform in that particular application. And we'll also determine what our sampling is going to be based on how we procure the item. And all these considerations will go into the dedication plan and when we determine what it is that we're having to dedicate that item for. So the engineer needs to evaluate whether the item can be fully dedicated at our facility, or are there going to be attributes that we need to verify at the manufacturer's facility. If we have to take credit for something that's done by the manufacturer or the supplier of the item, then we'll have to perform either a commercial grade survey or a source verification to ensure that those critical characteristics are adequately being met and verified. We'll have to determine how the item is going to be procured. Do we need to impose any hold points or witness points on any activities? And then based on how we're buying the component, that will determine our sampling basis and how we determine how many pieces do we need to test? How many pieces are going to be required for destructive? Can we just do one? Do we need to do 9? It all depends on how the item is being ordered. When we look at the dedication plan and acceptance criteria, we'll be looking at it's a whole process. So it's more than just a testing activity at one time. It's really the dedication of a commercial grade item it's a whole process. It's not just testing. So we want to ensure that the item is purchased properly and that everything that is performed as far as the technical evaluation and determining critical characteristics is all done properly and in accordance with the procedures and the guidance that we have. After performing all the testing and evaluations, the results of the dedication plan will be documented, and this will provide that reasonable assurance and the objective evidence to ensure that the item will in fact perform its intended safety function. When we talk about the evolution of dedication, really the only thing that's really evolved is the expectation of the documentation that's expected to be seen or provided with the item itself. The methods haven't really changed. The expectation of critical characteristics have changed, where maybe originally, years and years ago, people would verify that, yeah, it's the right part number. It's the same part number that what's installed, so it's as good as the original. Well, you can't just claim based on the part number itself that it will meet its safety function. So the expectations of what the critical characteristics are, those have evolved. But the methods, your method 1, 2, 3, and 4, those haven't really changed the basic methods. It's just the expectations. So when we look at method 1, special tests and inspections, those are all typically things that are done here at our facility. Any of the performance tests that need to be done, megger testing, high current or pressure test for mechanical items, seat leakage, or anything of that nature. Those types of tests would be done here. When we talk about commercial grade surveys are similar to an audit, but they're performance-based surveys that are performed at the manufacturer's or the supplier's facility. And those particular activities, if it's a commercial grade survey, will be good for 3 years. The one thing to remember though about a commercial grade survey is it's not an audit. So that performance-based survey is specific to the dedication activity that's being performed. So we'll have a dedication plan that's written for that particular item, whatever it is. And if it's been determined that we're going to perform a CGS to satisfy one of the critical characteristics, then that commercial grade survey that's performed will be specific to that critical characteristic. And in addition to that specific attribute, we'll also look at the program requirements that support it. Because in order to do a commercial grade survey, the facility has to have a documented program or process that they follow that they can certify to. The method 3, source verification, this is not an audit or a survey. This is a one-time event that is performed for a specific critical characteristic. that will only be utilized for that one time on that order. So when if you have another order subsequent to the first one, if you performed a source verification on the previous order, you would still have to go back and do a source verification again on the next order, because it's only good for that one-time activity. And it would be, specifically intended to witness a specific test. Maybe there's a special hydrostatic test that it's a special setup that, it's more cost effective to actually witness the test at the manufacturer's facility than it is to set up a whole test at our facility. We'd go and just witness what they do. There may be another attribute. Maybe it's a more complicated test or something that we can't duplicate here. We would verify that activity at their facility, and we could utilize a source verification for that. The fourth method is acceptable item performance. So when you look at historical data, this method, we never use it by itself. It would always be used in conjunction with another method. We primarily use it to justify sample sizes. If we want to reduce a sample size and we look at the performance history of that item, we may be able to reduce the sampling based on method 4 evaluation. Some challenges, when we look at dedicating an item, sometimes we could be faced with some challenges. Sometimes it's just communication with the end user. Like I was saying before, when you look at dedication, it's, the item is being dedicated for your plant. And so it has a specific application where you're going to be installing it. So we need to understand if it's something special, what is the application, and is there a specific safety function that is unique to that particular item where it's being used. So understanding the end use application is critical, and just being able to get that from the plant sometimes is not as easy as it could be. So that could be one challenge. Sometimes getting client approvals in a timely manner. If there's a requirement in your contract that all the dedication plans have to be submitted for acceptance. I know with the last year and a half, being faced with COVID challenges and remote working, getting approvals on documents has been a challenge in and of itself. But that can be one of the challenges just in preventing just scheduling issues. Another one is communication with the OEM. Sometimes the manufacturers aren't willing to share information regarding specific attributes of a component that they manufacture. It doesn't happen a lot, but there might be some times where they don't have published data for a specific attribute. And in order to determine what the acceptance criteria is, we'd have to work with the end user and determine for the specific application of that item, what would be the acceptance criteria that should be specified to ensure with reasonable assurance that the item will perform its safety function. So getting those tolerances and developing the acceptance criteria when it's not just cut and dry information. So we've talked a little bit about challenges and talked about the evolution of dedication. One of the things that we'll go over now is the specific process and kind of the flow of a dedication activity at Paragon. So we've got two basic categories of items, whether it's mechanical or electrical, it really doesn't matter. You've got some standard items, and then you have more complex items. And so this is just a basic kind of a flow diagram of how the item would flow through and how the process would be completed here. So for standard items, you have fuses, multi-case circuit breakers, ball valves, gaskets, hardware, O-rings, just those simple type items. We would look at, you would be issuing us an RFQ for that particular item, and we would quote it based on what type of item it is. We look at it. Is it standard? Is it complex? We would then go over and we would look to see, do we already have an established dedication plan for this, or is it something that we're going to have to develop one for this item if it hasn't been a repeat, if it's not a repeat order? So we would quote it. We should be getting we would get the purchase order from your facility. We perform a detailed contract review to ensure that what we quoted is what's in your purchase order, because we want to make sure that we meet all of your technical requirements that you have included in your contract. So after that item after the PO has been received and the contract review is done, we'd place an order for the item. And after it's been received, we would do a receipt inspection whenever it came in. And at this point, we would ensure that the item is exactly what was being ordered, and that it came in properly with the right documentation. And then we would establish the traceability of that item to your particular order at that time. After the item's been received, we could then perform the technical evaluation in the CGD if there wasn't one already performed. And then once that's been completed and accepted, then we would initiate the actual testing activity on the floor. All the verification activities would be completed. The data would be reviewed and approved, and then we would be able to certify that item and actually supply it to the plant. If it's a more complex item, a couple of different things that we would end up doing. When we look at the complex item, we would determine, early on, is this something that are we going to need to take credit for a critical characteristic at the manufacturer's facility? We want to know that as soon as we can, so that we can, one, quote the item correctly, and then be able to get it scheduled and let the manufacturer or the supplier of that item know, hey, we're going to need to come and do a visit. So we would look at that. We would do a preliminary evaluation to determine whether or not a CGS or a source verification is required. Then once we receive the purchase order, again, just like a standard item, we'd do a full contract review, make sure that what we're going to be supplying is exactly what you're asking for and is what we quoted. We'd perform that technical evaluation and complete the CGD. That would include those critical characteristics that would require the commercial grade survey or the source verification. At that point, we would also be writing the commercial grade survey plan that would reference the specific criticals that we're going to verify. In addition, like I said before, it would include any programmatic controls that we would need to look at for the program that it's being manufactured under. We would schedule and perform that performance-based CGS or source verification. Once the item has been received, we'd confirm that the supplier provided that item in accordance with the PO, which would include a certificate of conformance from that supplier. Again, just like a standard item, we would be establishing the traceability with that purchase order so that we knew that that item was traceable to your specific order. We'd perform any remaining critical characteristics using method 1. If there's additional criticals that need to be verified, we would continue to finish processing all that. Again, just as before, we'd review the results. We'd be able to certify the item has been dedicated for safety-related use, and then we would supply it to your facility. So this is just an example of where a standard item would be supplied as a replacement for something that was originally supplied in a parent piece of equipment. So where we have a standard molded case circuit breaker, where we would have performed the technical evaluation and dedication plan, performed all the required tests, and then be able to certify it as safety related. Its end application would have been in one of these motor control centers that would be installed in the plant. So the parent assembly would be, similar to this, or maybe the application is completely different. But this is just an example of a standard item and where it would have been supplied for a motor control center. This other example here is more of a complex item. This is also a molded case circuit breaker, but within this breaker, it has microcontrollers that control the open and close and trip functions. In addition, it has a micrologic trip unit, which is also digital, that controls its overcurrent trip settings. And so in order to be able to dedicate this type of product, this involved many commercial grade surveys that we had to do on the manufacturer's facility. There are multiple facilities that we needed to visit to perform the verification and validation of the firmware. And in order to be able to get this completed, it was quite extensive. So it was by no means a simple device to perform a dedication activity, but it is a standard thing that we do here at Paragon. So this is an example of the flow for a standard item that would be considered generic in nature. So where you have a standard item that's typical and it has a specific application, this is really a flow of where you have an item type and it has the type of item itself has a specific function, but you may be able to utilize a generic dedication plan that covers a multitude of model numbers based on this particular type of component. And what this does is it prevents us from having to have multiple dedication plans for a single type of item. So where I can have one dedication plan that covers 50 or 100 different fuses, I can have that one plan instead of having a dedication plan for each fuse part number. So similar to what I showed before, the process for getting it through the system is it's pretty basic, but it saves an enormous amount of time when we have a generic plan that's been accepted for a particular item, because we've already completed the technical evaluation and the dedication plan's already created. And so we have that much less time to have to process for one of these types of orders. So to talk about some of the benefits of a generic plan, again, things that would be considered for a generic plan would be commercially available family or a series of items that can be used in multiple applications at the plant. So it really doesn't matter what the specific application is at the plant, where it's installed, because wherever it is installed, it's doing the same thing. So like a fuse, it has, it's protecting for an overload condition. So regardless of where it's at, it still has that same basic function. So starters, circuit breakers, fuses, an O-ring, they would all be basic components that would have that same function. The only thing that would really change in the dedication plan would be the acceptance criteria, and that would be based off of whatever its specific rating was. But the critical characteristics of that item for meeting its safety function, they don't change. It's just the criteria. And some of the benefits of a generic plan is the consistency and the collection of the data. So when we have a generic plan, the test data sheets can be created, and it's a standard template where the same type of critical characteristic is being documented. And when you see the same type of format, it just reduces errors. And with the only thing that's changing is the criteria. It's just the results that are different, and the format and everything else is the same. So it reduces the time for multiple approvals. So again, like I was saying, if you have 100 different fuses, you can have one plan, and instead of 100 different plans for the different models. So this reduces expenses on our side, not to mention when we quote it, it's going to reduce the amount of time that it's going to take and the cost that gets passed to the end user. Having the generic plans also enables bulk dedication. So, you know, if you needed 5 fuses, it's more cost effective to dedicate 50 than it is to just do 5. In addition to that, you know, because the time saving for dedicating 50 versus 5 isn't that much, and it actually it just makes it a lot easier. We can have things on the shelf ready to go, and then you're able to save in the long run through that through that kind of stocking program. And all of this with the generic dedication plan really reduces the cost overall. It reduces hours, it reduces yours. This is just to kind of reiterate the amount of savings when you really look at the number of items. This is an example of a generic dedication plan for a molded case, excuse me, for a starter. And you can see the applicable part numbers that this dedication plan is for, and the number of various part numbers that are included with 4 different sizes. And again, I'm only showing 1 page out of this 31-page document, but where we identify that, you know, all of these part numbers are applicable to this plan because the specific critical characteristics that have been identified, the criticals don't change. Again, it's only the acceptance criteria that's based off of the ratings of the actual component. So as we look at, you know, the approximately the number of hours that would be used to develop 24 individual dedication plans and compare that to 1 generic plan, you can really see how the cost savings would play into the amount of time spent. And I'm sure most of, if you're an engineer on this call and you've got a supplier that's submitting a dedication plan, I bet you would much rather see 1 generic dedication plan come in that addresses your CAD IDs rather than getting 24 individual plans that have been submitted for acceptance. At this time, I'll go ahead and turn this back over to David Mueller. I really appreciate y'all being in attendance this afternoon. And again, I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Tracy. So to follow up here, why should Paragon be your supplier of choice? I've worked in the industry for 40 years, and most of that time has been on the utility side. I worked for Exelon for 20 years and been with Paragon for 7. And when I was on the utility side, and I always considered a supplier, I looked at obviously their experience, but also for their capability and, you know, can they absorb the growth that they have been promoting to us. So Paragon right now, we've been performing commercial grade dedication for pretty much the entire time dedication has existed. Our engineering team, we have 17 electrical, 18 mechanical, 17 I&C engineers, and we have 44 lab technicians, not including the QA personnel. And that's where Tracy comes in, and part of his hat is on the QA side also. So as you can see, we have the resources to meet your needs. We talked a lot about electrical equipment and dedication, but you know, I do want to touch that mechanical is something we do. You can see our engineering staff on dedication. We also have completed over 12,000 dedication plans. And again, from very complex to very simple fuses type things. We like to pursue excellence. We focus just on nuclear. We do not have a commercial program. And all of our staff, our dedication plans are up to the latest standard. As Tracy mentioned, dedication has evolved. I started doing dedications as a PE back in the late 80s and early 90s, and the dedication plan and documentation required today is completely different than back when we started. So we meet the latest EPRI guidelines. We encourage peer reviews. We call on industry experts that we consider experts to come and do a peer check of our process to make sure that we are providing you to the highest expectation. And then also at Paragon, we have a very strong nuclear safety culture. We know each of you on the phone. That's really important, have that challenging attitude. I like to think Paragon, while we're growing significantly as a company, we're still small. The CEO of the company, Doug, still walks through the shop and he can challenge what's going on, but then the employees feel free to bring up comments and concerns to him and to the leadership team. And I think that's what makes us really a strong company, because we each look at each other and hold each other accountable. And that's what nuclear safety culture is all about. Next slide. So back when I joined Paragon, we developed what we called our peak system, and we asked utilities to provide us inventory data. And it was primarily an internal tool that we use to match the many dedications we've done, reverse engineering and repairs. And we took that data and the utility data and matched it up and found where we had opportunities. We get inventory data from just about every US market, US utility, and that equals about 12 million records in our peaks database. Fast forward to a couple of years ago, many of our customers said, hey, wait a minute, this peak system, how come I can't use it? And how come I can't go in there and see if I have a part that you've dedicated? One of the questions I got most often in my travels early on was, okay, you've done all this work, all this reverse engineering, all this dedication. How do I know you did it when I have a need? And so that resulted in us putting our peak system out on the system. So next slide. So if you go into type in paragones.com, like it says on the bottom there, you'll get that fancy slide there with the orange bar. And so we've made it extremely easy. I'm going to walk through real quick how you can find out that your need, your query that you're working on today, is it something that Paragon has done or could potentially do. So next slide. So in that orange bar that you just saw, if you have a need, you just type in, or what I like to do, cut and paste that part number into the database, that orange slide, hit enter, and you'll get something like this. For this example, we're using a small Cutler hammer breaker. It's used all over the industry, and there's hundreds of part number matches. As Tracy said, when we create the generic dedication package, this Cutler hammer is the perfect example, because there's literally hundreds of different model numbers behind that HFD. So it's very similar. So when you type in that number, hit enter, you see this pop up. Many times you'll see a picture. And while a picture of a Cutler hammer breaker like this isn't as important, there are items that are more unique to your plant. And if you have a picture, you can look at that and go, yeah, that's what I need. That's, as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So you'll type in that number, and then you'll see the little orange box there that says see all buying options, and you click that, and we'll go to the next slide. And then you'll see this busy slide here. Again, you see the picture on most items, but over on the right, you see sourcing options. The first bullet is if Paragon has something in stock. So you can see that we have some of those in stock right now. And then the industry, I mentioned that we have 12 million records in our peaks database. So this takes into account that data. We get US industry data. Some utilities send it to us on a daily basis, some on a weekly basis, and some on request. That data we receive includes on-hand, min-max, usage, demand, whether it's obsolete, repairable, critical spare, what have you. And so our calculation, when you see the word overstock, some of you might use the word surplus. The Peaks database takes into account the on hand, subtracts the max, subtracts the demand, and if there's extra left over, we call that overstock or surplus. That's really valuable because that gives the customer, if you're looking at this item, you have the confidence that if it's overstock, that utility will release it. So unlike other systems, when you see this, that there's overstock and stock available and it's something that we have dedicated, instead of picking up the phone and trying to hunt down that part, all you have to do is hit that request quote button. And then hit that button and next slide. This is where it makes it really simple. This slide pops up. You'll have to populate your name once and then it'll remember who you are. So you don't have to worry about that top section after the second time you use it. You'll want to put in your quantity you're looking for, if it's safety related, non-safety. One important feature is it emergent or non-emergent. So emergent would mean I need that part yesterday or tonight. Non-emergent would mean it's part of your work week. So it's not something we would call you back. If it's emergent, you're going to get a call back. You're going to get an email back immediately, and then you'll get a follow-up call almost immediately, but within 15 minutes. And our team at Paragon, many of them have worked at a plant, so they have experience working in an OCC. They know what an LCO is. We know what holding up an outage means. We think that adds value when you talk on the phone or email back to our staff. So emergent would mean you're going to get a call back 24/7 at night, holidays, whatever time you'll get a call back. If you mark non-emergent, you're probably still going to get a call back the same day. But if it's at night, we'll wait till the morning. And if it's later in the day, 4 o'clock, you'll get a follow-up call the next morning. So it's important to list if it's emergent or non-emergent. You can click the repair RE dedication. But one of the important steps we put in here is to type a little message in here. This avoids the back and forth on emails. And you can put in there that I have a need for the week of December 17th. I'm looking for one. The vendor says my lead time is 26 weeks. What can you do? Or this is an emergent. I'm in day one of a 7-day LCO. I need this part right away. Any information that would help us, like I said, avoid the back and forth on email, that's valuable. So you fill out this, easy to do little slide here. We've identified the item, and then you hit the send quote, and then it gets into our system. Fairly simple. Next slide. So key takeaways for our call here. As we discussed, the evolution of commercial dedication has gone through several variations and evolutions. There are multiple approaches to dedication based on the component, how complex. And so we understand that, and each item can be similar and can be really different. We've done highly complex heat exchangers and coolers and pretty much and valves. There's nothing we can't dedicate. We haven't done fuel, as Tracy said, but maybe that's, who knows, that maybe that's on the horizon. I don't know. Generic dedication plans can be developed for families and components. This is really significant as you look at the Cutler hammer breakers. Excellent example. You might have 30 or 40 different model numbers. And if you decide to go to the dedication, we would create that one dedication plan and dedicate many model numbers. Again, if you can create one dedication plan for many, it significantly reduces the cost, right? You can imagine developing that dedication plan takes time and resources to get it right. When you don't have to duplicate it, it just saves money. One important aspect that we'd like everyone to consider is to purchase in bulk. The Cutler hammer breakers are a great example. There's PMs on that. There's multiple usage. And like I said, we get inventory data from most of the US industry. We see their usage, and their demand might be for one or two, but when we see a high usage, we suggest that potentially you do a bulk purchase. The more you buy on a dedication, obviously the cheaper it gets and your cost goes down. We do take into account, obviously, the cost. The Cutler hammer breakers are relatively low cost, so it's not going to break any budget. And we also take into account the size of the unit because of storage in the warehouse. But again, if you can consider a bulk purchase and purchase for your 18 to 24 months, you can save some significant cost. And again, most important, our dedication plans are to the current EPRI guideline, which is, as most know, has changed throughout the years. We stay up to date. And again, we challenge ourselves. We interact with our partner utilities that we work with, and we continuously look for improvement. So I think that's the end of our discussion. I promised that we would have some time for questions. We got about 7 minutes here, and we'll open it up for questions.
I've been monitoring the chat. I haven't seen any questions being posted yet. I do appreciate the one testimonial from Kevin Goslin. I really appreciate that input as far as his use of peaks and how it's really enabled him to find what he needs in a short amount of time. I appreciate that, Kevin. We do understand that everybody's time is valuable. We've got just a few minutes left in the hour that was put aside for this webinar. I still don't see any questions. I want to make sure that everybody knows that if you didn't have a question during the webinar that you're able to post or ask, feel free to send us an email, give us a call. If you have any questions later, maybe after, maybe you send the webinar to somebody else to look at. If they have some questions or something comes up in conversation at the water cooler, don't hesitate to give us a call. We'd be glad to help you out any way that we can.
Yeah, and I would, as Kevin mentioned, the use of our Peaks tool, I would encourage you to give it a try. If you have a query or something, to type in that part number and look into our system. If it's on a dedication or potential repair or just sourcing, give us a try. Using the tool and looking for a quote, there's no obligation there. So like we tell most of our customers, give it a try. And that's a good way to match up our years and years of experience and items we have done to your inventory the quickest way that we know of.
Yeah, we're here for you. So this is the nuclear industry is our industry. Like Dave mentioned before, we don't have a commercial program, so we're here to serve the nuclear industry. So if there's anything that you need that comes up later, don't hesitate to give us a call. I've got one question that just came up, Dave. Is there a significant increase in the number of CGDs being requested for digital equipment? I don't know if it's really a significant increase. It looks like Ty is going to answer this question. I think as far as a significant increase, not really. I know that there are more digital items being requested and supplied. We have a number of components that we've done that are digital devices, whether it be a simple digital device or even a more complex digital device. So we have several dedications that we have performed that included digital. I don't know if the answer of being a significant increase is, if that's a yes or not. But I do know that it seems to be more common. It all depends on where the plant is in their maintenance or the replacement of their components, to whether they're allowing the digital components to be a replacement item. I hope that answered your question. And thank you for that, Anthony.
Anybody else?
So we've got about 3 minutes left in the slotted time. I keep looking over at the questions to see if there's anything new. Well, I think we'll give you back 2 minutes of your day. Again, if you have anything that comes up later, don't hesitate to give us a shout out, and we will absolutely take care of any requests that you have. I appreciate everybody's time, and y'all have a good rest of the day.
Thanks for your time.